What is up, all you real estate loving individuals? This is episode number 13 of the Real Estate Take podcast, and I'm your host, Wendell Butler. This is your go-to podcast with tons of information regarding the current real estate market, where we get various real estate professionals' current take on different areas of real estate. For today's guest, we have Jeremy Bourgeois. Jeremy is a Marine Corps veteran, thank you for your service, and a real estate investor who lives and works in Utah. He started in real estate by wholesaling, which is still his primary exit strategy, but he has also done multiple fix and flips, buy and hold investments, and note investments. He lives in St. George, Utah with his wife and works full-time in his real estate business, Scout Peak Home Buyers. Jeremy is focused on growing his existing business while also adding new focuses like land development and multifamily properties. So let's bring in Jeremy. Jeremy, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. I always make sure to ask that just to be sure.
Oh, yeah. Incredible introduction, by the way. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I kind of feel like I should put like something more else in it, make it a little more pizzazzy, but it works well so far.
I think so.
So let's learn a little bit about you. I'm going to start very broad and just kind of get to know more about who you are. I know we read your bio, but like, who are you and what got you into real estate? What is kind of your backstory?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Connecticut, much like yourself, I believe.
I wasn't born there, but I lived there a while.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I was born in Connecticut, raised there, lived there for most of my life. And after high school, though, I joined the Marines. Always wanted to join the military, so I did that. And I spent 5 years in the Marines in various different places around the country and around the world. And just from that experience, I figured out that I didn't really want to live in Connecticut for long term. So that's what's got me out to Utah, because I got to do a good amount of traveling while I was doing that. So that's what got me out here. And then as far as getting into real estate, when I was about a year away from getting out of the Marine Corps, I was at a spot in my life where I was like, well, I don't really know what the next step is. And that's pretty common, I think, when people are exiting the military. But my good friend Bruno, who you also know, I went back home on leave for my last leave period before I got out. And he was telling me how he was getting into real estate. He was super excited about it. And he wanted to tell me all about it. And I was like, well, this seems pretty cool. I mean, you can make a lot of money doing it, and you can have a lot of freedom in doing it as well. So, and I understood that was going to be a lot of hard work, but I was in the Marines anyways, which is a ton of hard work as well. So after I got out of the Marines, I just jumped full on into real estate and haven't really looked back since.
Yeah. And I mean, I can't blame you for moving from Connecticut. As soon as I possibly could, I moved too. I think me and you were talking about it at the same time. You're like, I'm moving to Utah. I'm like, dang, Utah. I'm like, I'm probably moving to Charlotte. And you're like, okay, hell yeah. And then you moved. And I think I moved literally like maybe less than a year after, because I lived in Worcester for a little bit. But yeah, man. Yeah, Bruno was on this podcast too. So people go check that out. I don't know. I forget what episode it was, earlier episode, but that's Bruno. That's who we're talking about. But yeah, Bruno definitely love to talk about real estate. And that's the thing. Like once you get into real estate, everybody just wants to talk about it. And then you start networking. And then it's a great thing to connect with people on. So glad that he brought that to your attention. Actually, do you want to talk a little bit about your first, I think you and Bruno did a deal together. I think it was both of maybe your first deal, or at least one of his first. And I think it was your first, but talk a little bit about that first deal and like how that made you feel during the process, like getting going into real estate.
Yeah, it was really cool, man. Actually, I think that was both of our first deals. And leading up to that point, for probably like 6 months to a year before then, we were both on the same wavelength at that point. So like he had gotten me into real estate. So I was super excited, and not just real estate, but like also personal development and that whole side of things too. So we were talking like every day, every other day on the phone. I'd call him when I was in California, just tell him what I was working. And we were both just listening to Bigger Pockets, trying to learn about real estate, learn the ropes so that we could get into it. And about 3 months before I got discharged from the Marines, he brought this fourplex deal to me, and he brought it over and he's like, well, I mean, do you want to do this deal with me? So I looked at the numbers on it, and I mean, I don't know, I look at the numbers much when I don't have a whole ton of experience. So I just did that from the level that I could, but it seemed like a pretty good deal. So I said, yeah, let's just do it together. So that's pretty much what we did. I actually signed the paperwork for it when I was still in California, but that was a fourplex in Connecticut. And we did really well on that one. We actually just sold it last year.
That's awesome. Yeah, like you guys plan to do kind of like a FHA house hack with it, right?
Yep.
So I don't know if you do remember the numbers. I have like a rough idea of the numbers and like how how it kind of looked when you were looking at it, or it was just like such a first deal that you just kind of looked at it and you're like, this sounds good, let's just do it. But want to run through like what your
I do.
mindset was looking at it from like afar, and also how you, because I'm sure you didn't
Yep.
see the property before you closed on
Yep.
it. You kind of just trusted Bruno. So like, how are you feeling doing that with your first deal? Because that's a big step that even experienced investors don't do yet.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a lot of trust for him. We had a lot of, I mean, Bruno and I have been friends since like third grade, so we go back pretty far. And I trusted that because he was on the ground, he did the inspection, the walkthrough, and everything on the property, that we were going to be in a good spot. And that paid off. Honestly, it really did. So, but as far as the numbers go, so we initially purchased the house for $252,000, which was actually at the time, believe it or not, that was above the appraised value. So I think it appraised at 240 something, 245 maybe. And we actually had to bring an extra $7,000 to closing because there was that discrepancy.
Was this during like the COVID when like everything was just exploding and you would just like,
no, not even. We closed actually probably as COVID was starting to,
oh, wow,
to happen. Yeah. So it was a great time.
great timing too.
Yeah. And looking back on it too, it's like at the time I was probably thinking like, oh, we're not really getting a great deal on. I mean, we're buying it above the appraised value, but we just sold it last year for $430,000. So, I mean, I guess that just goes to show it's really not about, I mean, you just have to get in. If you're going to get into real estate, like just do it. Because if we hadn't taken that step, then we would not have seen the fruits of that labor. So it was awesome.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you didn't buy it and just hold it as it was. Like, what was your game plan
Correct.
going into it? And what was kind of like the steps that you took to do it as well? And where did you get the money to do it? Because I know I see pictures of you guys like doing throwbacks, like first deal. You guys playing S in the middle of a like kitchen that
Looks
you guys
like a
were
war
placing
zone.
or whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Been there, done that. That's always fun.
Yep.
I don't know if I want to do it again. I mean, I probably would, but you got to start doing that to get going for sure. And yeah, just break down what your plan was and then what you guys ended up doing. And then, yeah, even dealing with tenants, like the whole thing's behind that too.
Yeah. So, I mean, that deal was such a great learning experience getting into real estate because it was an older house. I think it was built in the late 1800s, didn't even have concrete foundation. It was just like stone. But we bought the house and I think the rent per unit, they varied in the units a little bit. I think two of them were like $675 and then the other two were $750. And we knew that those were way below market value. So our plan was basically to go in one unit at a time and just turn them over. So we would just go in and renovate them. Not that they needed a crazy amount of renovations. They were just pretty outdated. So we went in and did paint and floors, nothing crazy, but we almost doubled our rents on that. So we took the ones that were at $675 and we turned those into $1,200. And then we took the ones that were at $750 and we turned those into, I think it was $13 or $13.50. So that was kind of our plan. We did it one unit at a time. It took us about a year because we were just getting into it and we didn't have super efficient processes. And we were also learning the construction side of things.
Yep.
But we did a lot of the work ourselves. And I learned a ton about construction and remodeling through that and also about real estate in general because we started and I think we were cash flowing a little bit when we initially bought the house. But by the time we had turned all the units over, each of us were cash flowing $1,000 a month. So it was a great deal.
Yeah, I remember talking to Bruno about it because I knew that he owned that 4-family and he was asking me, because I have the 8-family in Putnam, when are you going to sell that? And I was like, I don't think I'm going to sell it. And he's like, I don't think I want to sell mine either because the cash flow is so good. But then he ended up, I guess you guys ended up selling it. I'm guessing to get money out to put back into your business to help speed it up more and do more, right? Use that money over again. But yeah, I mean, it's just a phenomenal deal. It's definitely a good first deal because a lot of people have their first deals not go well. And then it makes them be like, should I stay in real estate? And luckily for you guys, and he was like, it's not just luck, it's you create your own luck. So you guys were smart and did your due diligence and had a plan. It went well and you got to reap the rewards, and which is awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, so after that deal, what else did you get into real estate? You say that you focus on wholesaling as an exit strategy now. Tell us a little bit about that and how you build your business around that and why you like using that as an exit strategy for now.
Yeah. So around the same time that we got that first property, we also started wholesaling too. And for me, what wholesaling is basically just the art of finding discounted properties and being able to get those under contract. And wholesaling, you're able to pass those opportunities off to other investors. But for me, I'm thinking if I can get a steady pipeline of discounted properties coming in, then I can take the ones that I want to keep and I can take those down myself, either to fix and flip or to buy and hold. So that's why I've chosen wholesaling to be kind of the first stage of, I guess, my real estate empire is wholesaling, just so that I can build up a really solid marketing strategy to bring in more properties. But that's what I'm still doing to this day. That's what I started with. Other than getting that fourplex, we started doing those deals. And I think the first deal, I mean, I didn't really make anything because we made like $3,000, I think. But off of that $3,000, it went all back into marketing. That was just paying off our marketing that we initially had spent. And it took us probably 2 or 3 months to get that deal. But later in the year, we got another one that we made $12,000 on, and another one that we made $20,000 on. So it started building up a little bit there, and I've taken that out to Utah, and I've been doing that since September of 2022 out here.
Heck yeah. And how do you, when you wholesale, it's sort of like a lead generation strategy in a way. Do you mainly focus on mailers, like text messages, cold calls, do a combination of them? What's kind of your idea around it, or the best approach? Maybe for people that are interested in getting into wholesaling. And then also, let's do that question after this one. A lot of people think wholesalers are like kind of immoral, I would say. Or they're taking like jobs from brokers, or they're like trying to just trick sellers to sell for less. But what do you have to say about that? Because I have a different opinion. Wholesalers are great. Depending who you talk to, there's bad people and everything. But kind of like, what's your take on wholesaling, and why is it a good thing?
Yeah. So, and I think honestly that the reputation that wholesaling has gotten is for a reason. There's a lot of people wholesaling that I don't really think should be wholesaling because they're not doing it ethically. At the end of the day, it's not really about just getting a deal for a deep discount. I mean, you have to approach it from, you're in a business. If you're wholesaling, you're in a business, and your business model is to help sellers out. So, and that's not everyone's situation. Like, most people are better off not selling their house to a wholesaler, but there are specific situations where it absolutely makes sense for someone to sell to a wholesaler rather than list it on the market and do other, and I would say specifically for houses that are in need of a lot of repairs, or someone who need to sell their property really fast, whether it's because they're about to be foreclosed on, or they just have to get money into their account to pay something off. Those people are more, that's basically who we're helping out. And we're able to do that by just closing these deals really fast for them and making it a very easy process. So it's just a completely different approach from putting your house on the market and kind of just waiting for the best offer. Some people don't have the luxury to be able to do that. And that's where wholesaling comes in. But it's a pretty small segment of the market, I think.
Yeah, it's a small segment of the market, but it's a part of the market that needs probably the most help. And like, maybe a lot of realtors don't want to take that on. They don't want to deal with people coming to see their house all the time. They just want like someone that can quickly shoot the property out to like their cash buying investors that can close really quick and easily and not ask a ton of stuff.
Exactly.
So I think that's the biggest thing. And that's where wholesalers are a great partnership or business if they do it the right way. Obviously, there's ones that can do it the wrong way, just like there's ones realtors that can do it the wrong way, just like there's loan officers, just like there's bad apples everywhere. So but you can't let the bad apples discredit the good work that is done.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons that wholesalers get a bad rap is because if you mess something up in the wholesaling process and there's someone who really needs to sell that house, you're really messing with someone's life.
Yeah.
Like, if you're messing up that transaction, like, do something else with it, you're really screwing someone over. So like, you kind of have to know what you're doing. And obviously there's a learning curve there too. So you have to do it first before you really know what you're doing. But yeah, when it comes to some difficult situations, you just have to make sure that you can come through for them.
Yeah. Especially like on the back end of it. So like, you get it under contract, wholesaling it, you got to find someone that can actually pull through and buy it. There's a lot of investors out there that are like, I got it, I can do it, blah, blah, but then they don't because they get cold feet, or they like don't really have the money, etc. So you got to vet them too. So you kind of do act like a broker in a way, but it's just a faster and it's a more knowledgeable broker to investors without like the title of being a broker, obviously. Just to piggyback off that too, like what do you think is the best way for you personally of how you've been wholesaling and creating your business around? Is it more mailers, phone calls, texting? Do you door knock at all? Kind of talk about that a little bit and how you kind of would advise someone that wants to get into it, like how they could structure it.
Sure. So when I first started, one of the first things that I was doing was I would spend like an entire day just driving for dollars. So for anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's basically where you get in your car and you're driving around town and you're taking down all the addresses of the particularly ugly houses. So you make a big list of those and you skip trace their info on that house, which basically means you pull their contact information, like their phone numbers and their mailing address. So we would do that. We'd get all their info. And then I'd spend the next day handwriting letters. It was brutal. We wrote like full page for each letter, but we'd spend about like 12 hours a day just in a dark room handwriting letters to get those deals in. That is not what I would recommend. It's super inefficient and there's way more efficient ways to do it.
How fast did you switch to finding just like an actual mailer to help you out with like, looks like it's handwritten, but it's not. You're actually
Actually, we looked at doing that. We looked into doing that for a while, and we were even going to buy our own machine that,
the one that
did
holds the pen.
Yeah, we were going to do that, but we ended up switching to SMS marketing. That was before they really cracked down on it, which was last year. They cracked down on a lot of the laws for SMS marketing.
Yep.
So I don't do any more SMS marketing because of that. But that's what I was doing for a while. I mean, that brought in some deals through SMS. Cold calling has always been a pretty good one for me. That's how over the last couple of years, that's how I've gotten most of my deals. And those are kind of the bigger ones as far as outbound marketing goes. But right now I'm trying to transition to more of an inbound strategy where we're just getting started with mailers again, except this time they're going to be postcards where it's more automated. And we're also doing some website stuff, and we're even putting up like billboards out in town. So we're doing a couple different things. And also, I just moved into this market in St. George. And so we're trying to figure out what works the best here, because I think different marketing strategies work differently in different areas. So right now we're in a testing phase.
Yeah, that's for sure. And that's one thing that people don't realize is that each market is different. And you wouldn't think like it's that different with like mailers, cold calls, or SMS or whatever. But it really is, because if you look at the demographic of the area, that can kind of tell you a lot. And then you look at the type of people that live there and their type of culture and how they like to be approached. Because like in the South, it's probably a lot more talking face to face and actually like calling people and things like that. And they like that a lot more because they're more built around trust and like learning about the person more and having like actual face-to-face conversation usually. And then there's more like transactional, which is like, I would say New England's pretty transactional.
Yep.
And places like that where they're just kind of like, this is how much I'll sell it for. Do you want it? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Don't talk to me other than that.
Yeah.
Yep. That really depends.
Absolutely.
But yeah. So other than wholesaling, I know that's your base of your business. And you say you basically cherry pick essentially the ones that you like the best once you get them to maybe fix and flip them or do burrs or holds. What's kind of your strategy on that front? Like say you find one that is a good one that you want to keep. What's your game plan for that? And then what do you do with it? Or tell us a story about one that you recently did.
Sure. We'll use one that I did last year, for example, because this is a pretty good one. So we cold called the owner, and he said that he wanted to sell his house. And so
hold on, how many times did you have to call him before you got a good conversation with him? Just to let people know how hard the work is. Unless it was nice.
Yeah, no, actually this one I didn't have to do a ton of follow-up. I think I know the one that you're referring to. I had one that we made a $50,000 assignment on last year, but only because I called the guy 45 times.
Yeah, it takes a lot.
Yeah, 5 times. I went back through my records and I was like, wow, that's how many times it took to get this guy to the closing table. So yeah, it's a lot of people like to market wholesaling. I think it's to like sell their course or whatever, but they like to market wholesaling as something where you just go out and make a ton of money really quick. But it's not a really easy business. I mean, you have to put in a lot of work to really make things happen when you're wholesaling. So yeah, that's my take on that. But back to the one that I ended up taking down last year, this one in particular, we talked to the seller and they basically had their son was living in the property, but they lived in Montana. This was a house that was in Salt Lake City. And I lived about 15 minutes away from the property. So I was like, this is something that I could take down myself. And my initial exit strategy was to wholesale, so I tried to get everything locked up at a wholesale price. And then, if I can get it at that wholesale price, then it's an even better deal for myself. So we did get it locked up at 189. And the house, the after repair value on the house was 420,000. And it needed a lot of work. It was a meth house. So his son was living in there, not paying any rent. It was a hoarder house. There was a ton of just junk all over the place. It was disgusting. It had, they had definitely done some meth in there. The backyard was like a junkyard. They had like burned out cars and like so much junk.
Yeah.
And it was a real project. And I went over the numbers originally and I'm like, well, I could wholesale this deal and I honestly probably could have made $90,000 or $100,000 on an assignment. Maybe a little bit less, maybe 80 or 90, but or I could take this thing down myself and make that plus another 30 or 40 and learn a lot in the process. So I decided to do that because I had the funds available to do it. And I've done fix and flips in the past. So I kind of wanted to, and I like getting my hands dirty too. I mean, I don't want to just be the guy who's wholesaling. I would like to do different aspects of real estate investing. So that was basically my that was my initial process on it. And it was quite the project. We bought it last March and I had sold it in last October. So bought it for 189, put about 65 into it. And I sold it for $420,000 on seller financing.
Heck yeah. So did you seller finance the whole thing, or how'd you structure that? Because that's very interesting, because then you can do a lot with that, because you can sell a note, you could just have it be passive, and that's pretty passive income because you're just getting paid basically interest in principal. And then worst case that could happen is they don't pay you and you just take that property back plus the equity that they gave you with the down payment. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, tell us about that then. Like, that's really cool. That's a good niche that people don't think about in real estate.
Yeah, honestly, it was pretty tough to pull it off because I bought the property with hard money. So how do you sell or finance something that's on hard money, right? You don't. So basically the way that we structured it was I had the property listed on the market, and I said I would sell or finance someone for 10% down. And I think we have it at 8% interest right now. That's it's just a little bit more than what the interest rates were at the time when I sold it. But because we put it into a lease option, so the way that we structured the seller financing end of things is that we put it into a lease option that converts into a contract for deed. So I can take the lease option and then I can go to a bank and say, I would like to get a DSCR loan on this property to refinance into a DSCR loan. So I can do that because I have that lease on it. I'm getting the payments for it. And then what happens is after 1 to 3 years, we convert the lease option over into a contract for deed. And then the seller or the buyer actually buys the property then. So that's how we structured it. And I did that on a couple deals last year. And because it was a difficult time in the market to sell properties, you can actually sell them for a higher price. You can sell them for a higher price and you can get some cash flow out of it too. So because of that, that's kind of the route that I took with it, because I like cash flow. I would rather have cash flow than a big chunk of change that I just get obliterated by taxes the next year. So that's kind of the route that we took with that one. And I think each of those properties makes me $750 a month on single family houses, which you can't really get here in Utah off of a standard rental because rental numbers don't work in Utah.
No, yeah. So basically you set it up it's like a lease to own type situation, right? But it's with financing kind of intertwined within there. Like, did you have to pay off the hard money loan to get it, to set that up? Or like, how did you get rid of that initial hard money loan when you got the person to purchase the property? What was the kind of part of that?
Yeah. So funny enough, my hard money lender was actually the one who put me onto this idea.
Oh, wow.
He was like, why don't you just do this with it? And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that was even a thing. And I think it's pretty niche strategy that I haven't really seen used ever. Flipping something into a seller finance, super common. So yeah, it was his idea with doing that. And he was cool with me just selling it because I'm refinancing him out anyways. I already did refinance him out of it. So he was cool with it, as long as he got his money back, he was good with it. And we actually just closed out the refinance on the second property that we did that with just 2 days ago. So we just wrapped those two up and now they're both in long-term loans.
Heck yeah. So that's pretty smart. As long as the hard money is open to that, it can go real well. Yeah. But even a lot of hard money lenders, they'll still be open to that. They might just want you to do like a bridge loan to continue the process. So they might make you pay like some extra points or so to kind of extend it, but they're fine if you're kind of doing that as long as they get their money and they continue to get paid and they understand your exit strategy.
Yeah.
In worst case, like, you can always just sell the property too. Or you set up like that balloon, kind of what you do with the buyer of the property. You say like in 3 years, you have to basically purchase this or have to get some financing on it, right? Is that what happens? And then like it sets up that timetable that they're going to get their money back in worst case. Worst case, you just get the property back anyway. So, and then you can figure it out from there. So it's pretty cool. There's so many ways you can do stuff with notes and seller financing and things like that. It's super interesting, super passive, get cash flow, and you don't have to worry about the maintenance of the property really. And as you said, with the rental market for single families right now, it's hard to cash flow. And that's a way that you could cash flow, which is super cool. But yeah, like that's super interesting. So you do flips, wholesaling, you do some notes investing, and you said you got some multifamilies as well. Have you got any multifamilies in Utah yet? Are there a lot of multifamilies out there, or is it more single family primary? Or
we've been primarily marketing to single families, but right now I have one that I'm looking at with a couple potential limited partners that we're looking at a 20 unit complex up in Logan, which is up in northern Utah. great market up there, but the cap rates here are really low. We're getting like 4 or 5 caps for properties out here. So multifamily is, I would probably prefer to wholesale most multifamily right now because I don't have a ton of capital to put into that. But I'm sure, someone like you've probably gone out and raised that capital. So there's ways around that. But I wouldn't say it's one of my primary strategies, but it's definitely something that I want to get into over the long term because it's great for cash flow. And also if you can get a multifamily flip, do that. I mean, you can make more on a multifamily flip than you can make on single family flip, quite a bit more.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's good for long-term cash flow. It's good for, tax write-offs. You can do huge cost segregation tax write-offs on it. You can do just normal depreciation is huge too. And then there's different ways you can approach it too. Like obviously you can raise capital for it, get people investing in it. They can get returns for it. There's a lot less risk because there's so many units, so many people renting it. So say if like there's 5 units that aren't filled, maybe your vacancy is only like 10% at that point, which isn't a huge deal because it still covers pretty much all the expenses plus some of the property. And then I've been seeing too, like with supply going down, if you find apartment complexes that you can colonize, you basically get like a 20 unit apartment complex that's like a townhome or something and reach out to the town, see if they're okay with colonizing. That's like 20 flips in one deal.
Oh yeah.
As long as you find good financing for it where they're okay with you doing that and you get enough reserves to like pay that as you are doing it, because obviously you're not going to get cash flow from the rents. Make huge whopping returns there. But it gets a little more risky. So yeah, you want to build a base before you get into that stuff. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm starting to build a base as well before we dive into crazy things like that. But it's cool. Real estate, you can do so many different things. So and once you get really good at one thing, you branch off and do other things. And you meet people that do other things. You can work with them. It's just fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so based on like everything that you've done, I want to dive into like some lessons that you learned or things that some nuggets you can give to anybody that's listening to this.
Sure.
What is like the most important lesson that you would say that you learned starting in your real estate career and so far throughout it? Just dive a little bit into that. Like what pops in your mind right off the bat?
Sure. So I think probably right off the bat, something that would have helped me a lot when I was first getting into it, I was partnering with a couple of my friends who were also getting into it at the same time. We were all kind of learning at once. But I think something that would have really helped me out would have been learning from someone who's been in the industry for a while. They know what they're doing, because I think we had a couple deals that just didn't work out because we didn't have the proper oversight on it. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. Making connections with people, going out and providing just free value, just going and helping people out who are in the real estate space. I still do that, where I'll go and find someone who knows something that I don't and see if I can just go help them in their business. I think last year I spent like about 4 months just working for free for a developer so that he could teach me the ropes on how to underwrite a development deal. And that was super helpful for me because now I have that knowledge. And I mean, knowledge in real estate, I think, is the most important thing to have. So even more so than capital, because if you know how to get capital, you can raise capital and you don't even need to come out of your own pocket for deals. So I think knowledge and connections are some of the most important things rather than capital. I think those are some of the most important things that I've learned.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I totally agree too. Cause what's that saying? Like if you can bring the tools and find the deal, like you'll find the money. Money's probably, it's weird to think about, but money is like probably the least important thing into a deal. I mean, it's the most important to get it done, obviously, but to start a deal, it's probably the least important because as long as you can get the deal, explain why it's a good deal, and then have the network of people that you can bring it to, like someone's going to be like, sweet, I'll come in on that deal with you.
Yep.
And you don't know until you do it, because I'm sure people listen to Bigger Pockets and stuff, and people say that all the time, and they're like, no way, there's no way. But then you do it once, and I'm sure you've done it too. You like have a deal, and you're like, hey, there's a deal, and you want a partner, and out of nowhere, people are like, yes, 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 and you're like, okay.
Yep.
It just comes because there's a lot of investors sitting on the sideline that want to get into real estate, don't have the time to learn, don't want to learn. They just kind of want to get easy returns, and they'll give you the money for it. So I think that's a really good lesson that not a lot of people have brought up, but that's an awesome input you had there on that. Yeah. Now, to go piggyback off of that too, you kind of mentioned a little bit of this as well in answering that question, but throughout your time in real estate, like what is something, or what is your change? How has your mindset changed in regards to like business networking and like wealth creation wise from the beginning to like now? Like how was your mind when you first started and like getting into like your first deal compared to like now with your business networking and wealth creation? How has it like opened up?
Well, when I started, I had no experience in business. I came from the Marine Corps, which is about, I mean, I guess you could probably draw some similarisms in the Marine Corps and business, but it's pretty far away from the civilian world.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to sales and, networking and that kind of stuff, it was very far off of that. So where I was when I started is quite a bit different from now, because my first couple phone calls, I was pretty nervous for those first couple phone calls. I was like shaking out of my pants for those ones. But now I can have conversations much more fluidly, talk about real estate a lot easier than that came to me in the beginning. But I think the biggest thing that's shifted for me to make it more comfortable is when I was first getting started. I mean, and I guess this is probably mostly pertaining towards like wholesaling and the sales side of negotiating deals and getting things closed. When I was first starting it, I was approaching it from an adversarial point of view, where there's like you versus the seller, and you just have to get that deal closed no matter the cost, and who cares what happens with the seller. And over time, that's completely evolved for me, because now I'm much more carefree about it. I'll get on the phone with someone, and I come from more of a mindset where it's like, okay, can I help this person out? And if I can't help them out, then can I point them to someone who can help them out? And if I can't point them to someone who can help them out, I get off the phone and I will take them out of my pipeline, because at the end of the day, it's really just a sorting process. And when it comes down to someone selling their house, they're either serious about selling their house or they're not. They either want to or they're not. And if they want to, we have a solution for them, whether it's listing their house, whether it's just us buying it or wholesaling it on either cash or creative finance. We have a solution for them. But if they don't actually want to sell their house, like there's just no motivation there, or they just want a ridiculous price or something, it's like, okay, cool. We'll take them out of the pipeline and move on to the next one. And I just try to provide as much value to whoever I talk to as I can, whether I close the deal or not. That's secondary. What comes first, I think, for me, is being able to help the person who's on the other line. And that's probably the biggest shift that I've had since I got in.
Yeah. And I think that's just like, that's growth in business, because you, especially in sales for the most part, because I feel like when everybody gets into sales, they're like, I have to sell this, I have to sell that. But if you go with a mindset like that, you're like pushy, you don't get as much sales. And then you always see like that person that's kind of like carefree, doesn't look like they're like trying, doesn't look like they know what they're doing, and they're selling. I think it's because when I'm getting sold, like I like getting sold. I like when people sell me good. If I go buy a new car or something, like I want them to like make me feel good and like sell to me. And to me, selling is just like connecting, not being pushy on stuff, not just like trying to sell me shit. Because if you try to like blatantly sell me stuff, I'm just gonna be like, no, I don't want to. Like I don't know, like snake oil salesman in a way. So I think you touched on like having a carefree attitude, which doesn't mean like you don't care. It just means like you're going into the conversation open for anything. And even if you don't get the sale, you're trying to at least help them some way. And if you go with that mindset of like providing value, even if you don't get the sale, you're going to get more sales, because the person trusts you and is open to you and really appreciates you providing them with that insight. And I can guarantee you could probably tell stories about this. You talked to someone that was very closed-minded, and maybe they had a problem, and then you were more like, okay, like I guess like right now is not really a good time. Like, is there anything else I could do for you? Like, could I help you out some way? And like they asked you to do something and you did it for them, and then all of a sudden they're more open to you, and all of a sudden they come back to you and they're like, hey, I reached out to that person. Actually, I am interested in selling the house now, and they go back to you. And I don't know, first, it's a people-to-people business, and people don't realize that it's not transactional. It's about relationships and really understanding people. And once you get good at that, you just become a much better, not only human, better salesman and a better business person.
Yep, absolutely. Couldn't agree more with that.
Yeah. So like, was there any situations where you kind of went into something the seller was like, hell no, closed box, like a turtle shell, and then you did some stuff, like you mentioned stuff to help them out a little bit, and they opened up? Like, do you remember anything like that ever happened to you?
Yeah. Well, I guess pretty similar. So not like someone being just like completely shutting me down. But I mean, there's one lady, I talked to her a couple months ago, and she was telling me about her property, and she wanted to sell it. She was serious about selling, and but she wanted to, I was looking at her house, and I'm like, okay, well, the house is in great condition. From everything you're telling me, from everything I'm seeing about it, it's a great house. It's in great condition. You're not going to want to work with me on this. You don't want to sell your house. You're going to be leaving a ton of money on the table. I just shoot people straight with it. So I talked to a lady earlier today where I told her the same thing. And like, those people are better off just listing it on the market. But I'm also an agent. So I told this lady, and then she's like, okay, well, do you do listings too? I mean, if that's the case, then can we just list it with you? Boom, done. And now I'm actually partnering with an agent on that one, because it's out of my area. It's up in northern Utah, and I'm down in southern Utah, but we're taking that listing and being live next week. So yeah, absolutely. Just providing the value first, and then stuff comes afterwards. That's kind of the approach that I take with it. And it feels better too, to do something, to do it that way, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. People don't understand, like, when you get money or make a deal and like, you know that you did it like a bad way. If I even think about it, like, it makes me just like I don't like it. So I don't know how people do that.
Yeah.
But when you do it the right way and you get the sale, or like when you do it the right way, maybe you don't get the sale, but you help them out and then they sell it and they come back to you and say, thank you so much. Like, I don't know, that's just so much more fulfilling and rewarding. Yeah. And then they refer you around. So then you just become someone in their mind that is a good person, and they do refer you, which doesn't happen right away, but it does come back.
Yeah.
Like, karma is real, I feel like. It's kind of like a karma thing.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so the next question was kind of similar to what we just went over. So I'll hit that one because you might have another good piece of advice. So what would you say is your best piece of advice to like new investors, like brand new, just getting started, that wants to start investing in real estate? Like, how would you start, and what's the first steps that you would take looking back at it?
Yeah. So I would say use your strength, whatever that is. If your strength is just like you've been saving up a ton of money over time, then you can jump into that first deal, and then you'll start to learn. That's how you're going to learn the most, is by jumping in. So use your strength and jump in with that in mind. So like my strength, for example, when I got into real estate, was I had just gotten out of the Marine Corps. I dealt with 5 years of hiking around with a heavy pack on my back and sleeping in uncomfortable places and just being completely uncomfortable for like such a long time, that it was actually kind of easy for me to jump into the world of entrepreneurship, where everything is pretty uncertain. That had some similarities to what I had gone through. So it made it a little bit easier for me to make that leap. But there might be someone who's, if you've done a lot of sales in the past, like you've done solar sales or something like that, then you would probably be a really good fit to get started in like wholesaling, for example, because that is a very person-to-person interaction type business. And if you've been in the construction industry, if you've been a contractor, then you might be able to do really well working on flips or new construction builds. So using your strengths to kind of get you a little further along is a big thing. And I think that can help a lot of people out who are just looking to make the leap into it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because people overcomplicate it. They're like, I have to be good at this and this and this and this. And it's kind of like, double down on your strengths and then just find people that can help you with your weaknesses. You don't have to be amazing at everything. If you try to be amazing at everything, you're a jack of all trades and going to be an expert at anything. But if you're an expert at one thing, everything else comes along and helps you out, which is hard to wrap your mind around and really do, because sometimes you see, as an entrepreneur, I feel you get like the shiny object syndrome.
Oh yeah.
You're like, that looks cool. That looks awesome. That's cool. Should I try that? But it's like, get really good at that one thing, hone down on it. And then once you have that thing like a system, then you can start kind of branching out a little bit. But and it's similar to what you're doing with wholesaling and similar to what people do with fix and flipping. Like Bruno does the fix and flipping. Now he's branching out a little bit, doing some new builds. You're doing some new builds possibly now. Then you can start, branching out a little bit. But you don't got to do everything when you jump in. Just do that one thing.
Yeah. And you learn it one at a time. And like you said, I mean, you can hire people, you can partner with people who are really good at the things that you're not good at. And that makes a good partnership. When you're really good at one thing and someone's really good at another thing, and those two things complement each other, that's what makes a good partnership. So I've relied pretty heavily actually on partnerships since I've gotten into real estate. And I think that's gotten me a lot further than I would have gotten just by doing everything myself.
Oh yeah. Partnerships are the recipe to not burn out. I can tell you that. Because like, if you just do everything yourself, I feel like you're just going to burn out and you can't go as far.
Exactly.
It's true. You just got to branch out and keep networking, keep getting to know people and find people that can work good with you.
Oh yeah.
But also, here's another good one actually. So we're going to wrap up with 2 quick questions for you, because I know you got stuff to do and don't want to keep you here all day. So real quick, I know you got a ton of books behind you. So what's your favorite like business, investing, or real estate book that you recommend to someone that you've maybe recently read, or one that really changed your mindset or something, or opened your eyes to something?
Sure. I could say all the standard ones, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. Those are all good ones. But one that I've very recently read, and I'm going to be reading it again, and it'll probably be one that I read a couple times a year at least. The Go-Giver. I don't know if you've ever read that one, but it brings a different take on business, and actually a lot of what we were discussing today. You just go and give a ton of value, and then things come from it. But you don't go out and you're expecting to make a deal happen, or like trying to strong arm someone into doing something, where you're just going out and genuinely giving a ton of value for people who are in your marketplace, and then expecting those returns, not looking for them and not asking for them, but just expecting them. That's a great book that I'm probably going to have that one in a couple times a year.
Yeah, and that I've heard of that book. I'm pretty sure my dad even mentioned like reading it because it gives you that different mindset of everything's about just giving. If you give to people, it'll come back. Some people might not give it back, but then that shows you to not give back to them and not work with them.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like it helps you weed out the bad people and keep the good people. And then if you find someone that does the same thing and replicates that, then it's amazing. But yeah, that's a good book. We haven't heard that book yet. So that's an amazing book. Go Giver, great book. Business is all about creating the moral right way to live life and do business and grow together. So that's definitely, it sounds like a book that complements that and helps you think that way.
I'd even, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'd even say another one too, I'd put on equally on that level would be How to Win Friends and Influence People. I've read that one probably like 4 or 5 times, but it's a great one. That's mostly about relationship building, and kind of like what we were talking about. Real estate is 100% a relationship business. So I think those relationship building type of books are super important when it comes to real estate.
If you can't communicate with people or understand people, have like empathy or communicate, there's no way you can be successful in real estate. Sorry, whoever's listening that thinks that they can't talk to people. You just got to learn to, because otherwise I don't think you can really do much in real estate, because that's really the base of what you need, is be able to relate, connect, and work with people. And I mean, all aspects of it. With contractors, you got to talk to lenders, you got to talk to bankers, you got to talk to investors, you got to talk to sellers, you got to talk to buyers. Everybody's just people, and it's so emotional sometimes that you have to really be able to understand where people are coming from and understand the situations, and not just always think like business numbers, business, because it's an emotional space for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a good point. It can get pretty emotionally charged sometimes.
Oh, dude, yeah.
It really can. So that's a good point that you brought up that I haven't really heard brought up too often, but it's definitely true.
Especially when it gets close to closing, everybody involved gets so high strain. I'm like, guys, relax. Like, it's gonna close. Everybody's like freaking out. Jesus, all they asked was a document. Just give them the document. Why are you freaking out?
Yeah, I know. It gets real crazy when you get down to the wire.
Yeah, especially with wholesaling, because wholesaling can get like do or die at that moment, kind of. Because especially if you have a strict deadline that you have to sell it, you definitely probably gets real stressful. But you probably grow out of it. Repetition, you're like, it'll be fine.
Well, as long as you got good buyers in your corner who are going to come through and close on that side of things too. Wholesaling is once again a big relationship business where you have to know your sellers really well, but you also have to know your buyers really well too, and you have to know which ones are going to close and which ones aren't gonna, which ones you shouldn't really trust to get that deal closed. So
and the ones that you do find out that can't close, you just never really call them again.
Correct.
You're like, you lied to me, and we're done, unless they have a really good reason. Well, cool. So Jeremy, is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience, or tell them how to connect with you too? Or even if like in St. George, like if you do any meetups, do any charity events, anything like that, anything you want to put here or talk about here, this is kind of your minute or so to do so just before we wrap up. So go ahead.
Well, if you're here in St. George, I mean, we have a local meetup in town, Southern Utah Real Estate Meetup. I'm always there unless I'm out of town for some reason. So that's about once a month. Also, you could just feel free to text me at 435-236-0689 with any questions or anything that I can do to help you out. And you can find me on Instagram at it's Utah_homebuyer. So that one should be easy enough to remember. But so that's where you can find me. But texting, calling is always the easiest way to reach me.
Yeah, I was surprised that Instagram handle was available, because I'm pretty sure it's pretty like just Utah_homebuyer. Like, you're telling me that out of like the hundreds of thousands of people that live in Utah, not one person thought of that. You probably put it in and you're like, yes. Got it.
I was pretty stoked about it.
Yeah. But I'll have your Instagram handle like in the description and stuff, so people can reach out to you on there and give you a follow. And but thank you for coming on, Jeremy. This was awesome, and it's good to talk to you again and connect. And I got to come down to visit you in Utah, because Utah is beautiful. It's one of my favorite states, to be honest.
That's why I moved here. It wasn't even actually, I mean, the economy here is great and it's a good place to have a business, but I'll be honest, I just moved for the mountains. And so, if you ever come out here, man, we got Zion's only an hour from my house. The Grand Canyon's a couple hours. Bryce Canyon's a couple hours. So plenty of stuff to do out here.
Awesome. And the air is so crisp. It's just crisp air. So that's what it reminds me of. Walk outside, you're like, just feels good.
Except right now, it's starting to heat up. It's hitting 100 this week here.
Oh, yeah,
so.
never mind. Yeah.
Nice.
That is quite hot. That is quite hot.
Yep.
But all right, yeah, thank you for coming on, and
Thank
see
you for
everybody.
having me,
Thanks
man.
for
This is
listening.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah.